Okay, so task 8 says in real time, explain the rehire use case and configure an event for the same in SailPoint. So in order to trigger this event, which will be a lifecycle event, how I got here is I just went to setup and then I went to lifecycle events. So I'm going to need to trigger I'll quickly show the lever just so you'll see that an event was triggered for that user. And so when I go to my lever event, um, the event type is going to be an attribute change because I'm going to be changing one of the values in the attribute. That attribute happens to be inactive, and the previous filter is going to be false, and then I'm changing that to true. So when I change that to true, saying that it's true that employee is now inactive, it will then, once I run an aggregation and a process um, event task, it will change that employee's status. So down here, I chose as one of the included identities is to do a match list. And under there, I am choosing that I'm matching to, it needs to be the application HR source, which I had added there. And then I added an attribute and I said that in HR source, the attribute inactive needs to equal true. And then down here under business processes, it is the lifecycle event lever that I'm wanting to trigger. So I'm going to save that. And then in order for this to go through, I'm going to make sure I've changed on here. I did EMP089. I just changed that value to true. And then just to be sure, I'm going to save again. And then I'm going to go in and run a task. And that task, I'm going to aggregate the account. And then go to my task results. HR user aggregation, identities updated would be 1. I'm going to go back to my task and then I'm going to do an identity refresh. I just need 1. Okay, and so I'm going to update the attribute first and save and execute. And then I'm going to also do a process event. So then I'm going to do an HR source event. And I'll show you inside the event one. I'm just clicking the process events box so that it does trigger my lever event. Save and execute. Okay. And then in task results, it just shows you that it examined those files. And so I'll show you in debug really quickly. Okay, if I go to debug and then I go to the EMP089, I would hope that was the user. EMP, oh, sorry, identity, and then my EMP089. And then if I look, okay, so I'm looking for, let me see. Let's see. So you can see that down here below, the on line 59 inactive equals true, so they are inactive, and didn't change anything. And so if I go back to my file and I look at, okay, Um, so manual changes to demo user 89, and it says that it's from HR source, the account name EMP089, and the operation is to disable. And so I'll just click complete. Okay. And then now what I want to do is kind of reverse that. And then so if I go into life cycle events and you go down to the bottom, so just like we have joiner leaver, um, there is a reinstate life cycle event. And in the reinstate life cycle event, it's very similar, an attribute change, inactive, except these are switched. So now you've got true, is how the value is because that employee is not active in the company. And then you want that to say false, so that it is now considered that they are working there. And then, of course, the same thing um, for included identities. I'm going to say match list again, HR source. I'm going to add an attribute, the HR source inactive equals false. And then its lifecycle event is reinstate to save. And then I'm going to do the same thing over again. And then when I go to run a task, we're just going to bring them back in, do another aggregation. And let me make sure I have to change this 089 back to false and save. And then when I do my aggregation and task results, it should kind of say it again. So I have another identities updated would be 1, and that's because we're pulling them back into rehire in the company. And I'm going to go to task again and then continue to do my attribute update. Actually, I could have just, oops, sorry, save and execute. And then the same thing, I'm going to do the event so that it does the process event. Okay, and then I should be able to go back to my debug. I'm going to refresh this, go back into my EMP089, and you can see if I scroll back down into my attributes, it says on line 58, inactive, the value is now changed to false. All right. And so that would kind of simulate the rehire, triggered the rehire life cycle, and now your employee should be back into the system.